Regional Planning Commission for Wednesday, October 11th, 2017. And we're going to start with roll call.
Frank Peterson.
Here.
James Fewens.
Here.
Diane Vanderwell.
Here.
James Barnes.
Here.
Sarah Chilichek.
Here.
Larry Chesney.
Here.
Ed Hawkins.
Here.
Kevin Weisky.
Here.
And Peter Gower.
Here.
Great. Next we'll go to salute the flag. And if I can have Commissioner Weisky, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next we have approval of the agenda. Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. Next, we move along for approval of the minutes for September 13th, 2017.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Next, we move along to public comment. This is for anything that is not on our agenda. Do we have any? They say they're on agenda item 5. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Okay, we'll start with Tammy Holt Still.
Tammy Holt Still, for the record, Lemon Valley Swan Lake Recovery Committee. And a lot of you have seen me in the past. I've been here before, and I will keep coming back until the city of Reno is under control and the issues with Swan Lake, White Lake, and Silver Lake are back under control. The excess growth, the excess water, the excess affluent water needs to come to an end. The lake is still full, but yet 2 million gallons a day are going into that lake. And then you add, which I looked up this morning because I spoke at the city of Reno, as planning commissioners, you should be more than realize that one bedroom causes 120 gallons on average, sometimes higher, sometimes lower. You add all the apartments on Military Road, you add the new homes that are just being built on Military Road to the stressed out area already that are going into that Stead sewer plant, which is then going into the water. It's time for regional planning to step up and say, City of Sparks, you can't do this anymore. Or City of Reno, you can't do this anymore. Sparks needs to work with, instead of worrying about their own area only, need to look at everybody as a whole, because the North Valleys cannot take the stress that you're putting on them. The amount of water in closed basins is not working. I'd like to know why our closed basins are not draining. I understand that there has been pumping into, especially White Lake and in Golden Valley, they're pumping affluent water or pumping into the aquifers, water into the aquifers. Well, I'm a common person, but my common sense says you start putting water in the ground and then you get a whole bunch of water on top, water can't go down. So it just sits there. There's a problem. Stonegate is an issue. Stonegate wants to attach to the Cold Spring sewer plant. The Cold Spring sewer plant right now is pumping their affluent water into the aquifer. That lake has not dissipated, has not saturated, and it has not evaporated. So there's an issue. There's a major issue with what you guys are doing and allowing. And being the mothership for this area, it's time for the mothership to step up and say, no, this isn't right now, and not listen to the developers, not be Roger Rabbit when Jessica comes walking in the room, and lose your brain and all body functions. It doesn't work. It's just making it miserable for all the residents that are damaged. And it can't happen anymore. It's got to stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Danny Cletus.
Yes.
And if I mispronounced it, please
No,
correct
you
me.
actually said it right.
It's okay.
Dan Cletus for the record. I've lived here since 1973. It's a long time. When Stead, you had Lower Stead and Upper Stead. Went to Stead Elementary. Went to O'Brien Middle School, actually watched it being built. Got bused into hug high. Back then, we lived in a rural area. We liked it. The city keeps pushing the city in to our rural areas. We don't like it anymore. I thought I was going to be moved out of here a couple of years ago. Circumstances made me stay. My rural areas are turning into a big mess. I was shocked that Stonegate went through by the City Planning Commission because there's so many issues out there. Not only the highways, not only the water, just congestion, period. You have people living in rural areas that don't want the city. I talk to a lot of people in my neighborhood that can't make it to these meetings. Come on. We moved out there for a reason. I remember having to go clear to North Virginia Street to go to the grocery store when we moved out here. There wasn't no Scolari's, there wasn't no Walmart, there wasn't any of that stuff. We like it like that. But the city keeps pushing and pushing and pushing. More and more warehouses. You see the troubles we have out there right now. It's just going to get bigger. Back in the 80s, 395 wasn't enough. Now look at it. And it's just not one development. It's not two developments. There's warehouses being built right now. You got more truck traffic. There's subdivisions going up. The apartments going up. You add up all those people coming in, what is that going to do? All that ground, and this has to do with the lakes. We live in a closed basin area. There's nowhere for that water to go. It's not like in town where everything drains to the river and goes out. We're still dealing with the flood in January and February. I don't see anywhere down here dealing with the flood still. There's nowhere for that water to go. There has to be a study, an independent study done out there in the North Valleys. I know all the other studies that I've read told the city, the county, what needed to be done to certain lakes out there. None of that's ever been done. Now we're in a big old mess. It could have been avoided if steps were taken properly through the years. We wouldn't be in this big mess. Myself, I don't like all the building. I don't like the warehouses. I don't like the subdivisions because it's encroaching into me now. You guys backed us into a big corner.
We don't have a timer, but your time is up, so if you want to wrap up with the final statement.
This will be the final. You guys backed us up into a corner. Now what do we have to do? Just like anything else that gets backed in the corner, we have to fight. Some things you guys don't like to hear, I'm sorry. But our rural areas need to stay rural. They don't need big developments. Thank you.
Thank you. Next one, move along to business of the day. Public hearing regional plan amendment RPA 17-004.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Lauren Knox, Regional Planning. Alright, so before we get into the proposed amendment, I just want to provide a quick overview of the Truckee Meadows Service Area, or TMSA. Per the regional plan, the TMSA is defined as the areas within which municipal services and infrastructure will be provided. This includes the high-intensity core areas as well as the existing and planned urban and suburban uses. In terms of amendments, Policy 1.1.6 allows for the TMSA to be amended to include lands that are currently within the rural development area or within the future service area. Additionally, there are policies in the regional plan that govern the process and requirements for an amendment to occur, which we will touch on a little bit later in this presentation. And since an amendment to the TMSA is technically considered a regional plan amendment, the general process and review factors for a regional plan amendment apply. This includes sponsorship. So sponsorships can occur by each of the 3 local governing bodies, as well as the RPC and the RPGB. So for this specific request, it was sponsored by the Washoe County Board of County Commissioners at the request of the Washoe County School District. The request includes expanding the boundaries of the TMSA to include an 80-acre site into Washoe County's portion of the TMSA. For reference, the site is currently within Washoe County's future service area, which is the area outside of the TMSA that is identified for future inclusion into the TMSA. The land is currently owned by the Bureau of Land Management and is part of a larger 640-acre parcel that's not included in the request. We're only talking about an 80-acre portion. I want to make an important note here that since the land is currently owned by the BLM, it's considered designated public open space. And per the regional plan, designated public open space is considered part of the development constraints area. So upon transfer of the property to the Washoe County School District, that DCA designation will be removed. So we took this analysis into account knowing that portion. All right, so let's take a look at the location. I know it's a little bit hard to see, so the maps are in your packet on page 13 and I believe page 15. So as you can see, the site is located north of the Sun Valley area. And if we get in a little bit closer, you can see the site is directly adjacent to the developed area in the existing TMSA, which is north of Donatella Drive. So again, this map's on page 13 of your packet. So I'll provide a quick overview of Washoe County's TMSA as it pertains to this request. Policy 1.1.7.1 describes the calculation for determining the acreage allowance within each jurisdiction's portion of the TMSA. If the jurisdiction's portion of the TMSA as calculated is exhausted, then policy 1.1.7.3 allows for some development flexibility acreage, and this was a one-time 640-acre allotment given to each jurisdiction. With this request, Washoe County will be utilizing the development flexibility acreage defined by policy 1.1.7.3. And per agency records, the allowed development flexibility acreage available to Washoe County at this time is 244 acres. So this request again includes a total of 80 acres. However, there are slopes over 30% present on site. These slopes are considered part of the development constraints area. Thus, the calculation for the net acreage increase to the TMSA would take the slope area into account. So as you can see overhead, of the 80 acres, 1.2 acres contain slopes. Thus, the net increase in this request is 78.8 acres. The request is within the allowed acreage, and as you can see, 165 acres would still remain in Washoe County's portion of the TMSA to be expanded upon. All right, so let's walk through the analysis. As a tool to better analyze TMSA amendments specifically, an evaluation matrix was created which allows staff to analyze a request based upon an agreed criteria. Also, for any regional plan amendment, policy 4.3.6 of the regional plan requires the items listed overhead to be considered. A majority of the evaluation matrix essentially discusses criteria for each of the topical factors listed above. The full analysis was included as part of your staff report, but for this presentation, we'll briefly touch on these topics listed above. So in terms of regional form and pattern, the site is currently within Washoe County's future service area and is adjacent to the existing TMSA boundary. Also, it's directly adjacent to existing developed area. The proposed site is also directly adjacent to an existing residential area, and staff believes that synergy between the existing development and the proposed amendment site would exist. Also, as indicated by the Washoe County School District, a school facility at this site would support the surrounding residential area. Currently, students are actually bused about 5 miles away to get to school. All right, due to the unique nature of this request, the land will only become usable by the Washoe County School District for a school site. The school use may provide more employment in the area. However, staff anticipates minimal impact to the overall jobs housing balance within the region. So again, the amendment site is directly adjacent to existing development. Thus, existing services and facilities are also within proximity to the site. The property is also anticipated to be annexed into the Sun Valley General Improvement District service area for water and sewer service, and information provided indicates that the GID does have the capacity to do so. There are existing roadways also to serve the site. Traffic study was provided, which indicates minor mitigation measures that will need to be taken when the site is developed. So again, as noted in the previous section, infrastructure improvements are acknowledged. Also, the traffic study mentioned before indicates that no change in the level of service for roadways is anticipated. All in all, impacts to service levels and physical impacts are considered to be minimal due to the nature of the proposal, as well as the proximity to the existing services. All right, as mentioned previously, a slope analysis for the site was performed and indicated that slopes over 30% are present on site. This accounts for approximately 1.5% of the site being considered development constrained. Again, this doesn't include the public open space designation that exists until Washoe County School District acquires the site. Also, there's an existing BLM trailhead present on site. The Washoe County School District has indicated that they will work with the BLM to relocate the trailhead to a more appropriate location if this is approved. So again, the 6 factors above were analyzed for this proposal, and staff recommends that the RPC recommend adoption to the Regional Planning Governing Board. A motion can be found overhead and on page 9 of your packet. I'm available for any questions you have, and we also have Mike Foster with the Washoe County School District available.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Chair, just a quick clarification.
Sure.
Clarification question.
Commissioner
Lauren, does the school, when it comes in, is that going to be a project of regional significance? Will we see it again, or is this it?
At the Regional Planning Commission level, we will not see it again. However, it will go through Washoe County's general development review process. So Washoe County will see it if this is approved.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay. This is a public hearing, so I'm going to open the public hearing if anyone wishes to speak. Okay, with that, I'll close the public hearing. I'll bring it back to the commission. Any discussion? Or I'll also entertain a motion.
Well, Madam Chair, I'd like to make the motion.
Sure. Commissioner Peterson?
I move to approve the RPC's resolution 17-06 recommending to the RPGB adoption of the regional plan amendment to expand Washoe County portion of the TMSA by including and plus 80 acre site located immediately north of the developed area of Sun Valley as detailed in the staff report.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Next, we'll move along to public hearing item, Regional Plan Amendment, RPA 17-005.
All right, thank you again, Madam Chair. For the record, Lauren Knox, Regional Planning. So we already talked about the TMSA and amendments to it in the previous item, so I'm going to spare all of those details. But for reference, this request was sponsored by the City of Reno. This request is a bit different as it's actually removing the City of Reno TMSA designation from a 1,091 acre site, which would then designate the site as rural development area per the regional plan. The regional plan defines the rural development area as the area outside of the TMSA. The RDA consists of dispersed residential, employment, and other uses that do not require the provision of municipal services. Additionally, the rural development area requires that new divisions of land may not create parcels less than 5 acres in size. So let's take a look at the map. This map will provide some context regionally. As you can see, the site is located pretty far north of the main portion of the TMSA. In fact, that's about 25 to 30 miles north of the Spaghetti Bowl as the crow flies. When we zoom in, you can see that the site is directly adjacent to Spring Mountain. However, it's not a part of that development. This map is also available on page 119 of your packet. Again, approval of this proposal would roll back the TMSA in this location and place that property in the rural development area. So per policy 1.1.7.1, which describes the calculation for determining the area allowed within a jurisdiction's portion of the TMSA, the city of Reno is over allocated by almost 1,000 acres. You can see from the calculation on the slide, when using the net acreage associated with this request, approval of the request would shift Reno's TMSA allocation back into the positive. Again, net acreage is determined by taking the entire site and removing the development constrained portion. If this proposal is approved, the city of Reno would have almost 50 acres available for future expansion per policy 1.1.7.1. Right, so I want to note that for this proposal, the evaluation matrix that you heard about in the previous item is not an appropriate way to evaluate the proposal, as the matrix is really a way to evaluate properties seeking inclusion into the TMSA. So we generally refer to policy 4.3.6, which requires the items listed overhead on the slide to be considered, and we'll go through each of them again. So in terms of regional form and pattern, the sites currently within the TMSA, they're removed from the larger developed portion of the TMSA. It's approximately 30 miles north of the Spaghetti Bowl. The request includes removing the TMSA designation from the site, which was subsequently, again, designated site as rural development area. As stated previously, the rural development area, as the name suggests, is intended to be rural by nature with dispersed residential and non-residential uses that do not require municipal level services. The RDA designation is more consistent with what the property owner would like to see in future development of this site. So the property owner anticipates that they would like to eventually develop the property as a large lot residential development with the understanding that the RDA requires that parcels be 5 acres in size or greater. Again, for this type of development and residential use, the RDA in a more rural setting is appropriate. Again, the property is relatively far removed from the more heavily developed portion of the TMSA, and thus the jobs housing balance for the region will not likely be impacted substantially. And then in terms of the provision of services and infrastructure, one of the reasons that the TMSA amendment is being requested is also due to the lack of services and infrastructure planned for this specific area. The RDA does not allow for development that requires the provision of municipal services and facilities, so it's a more appropriate designation for an area with a lack of planned services and facilities. In regards to natural resource constraints, there are slopes greater than 30% present on site. The RDA designation with a more rural type of development will honor this natural topography and resources on site. So again, those are the 6 factors we analyzed for this proposal, and staff recommends that the RDC recommend adoption to the Regional Planning Governing Board. A motion is overhead and also on page 118 of your packet, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none?
Yeah,
Yes?
I got it.
Okay, Commissioner Chesney. Yes, speak up quicker.
It's not a motion to adjourn. We keep, as I go through this thing over and over and over again, we're talking about 5 acre, or minimum 5 acre parcels. I want to make sure that if we do in fact move on this, that we're not just endorsing that these are going to be 5 acre parcels, because in future planning, when it comes back to the county, I don't want the developer to have leverage to say that, hey, regional says, hey, we can make everything 5 acre parcels here. So I need some assurance that Jessica, you can help, that we're not just endorsing 5 acre parcel size.
So through policy 115 of the regional plan, we're not necessarily endorsing 5 acre parcels, it's that you can't go any less than a 5 acre parcel. So that's kind of a stop put to not have smaller development.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, this is a public hearing. Do we have any requests to speak?
I have none at this time, but maybe this gentleman would like to.
Mr. Crater, after you speak, if you'll please fill out a form.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
For the record, my name is Ken Prater. I'm one of the partners on this project, and we're excited to be before you today to reverse something that happened quite some time ago that clearly just doesn't make sense, being literally 30 miles away on public streets from the spaghetti bowl, and to think that this area could support 2,500 homes and 130,000 square feet of commercial, it's just not realistic. And we've been working with the owner, Bob Marshall, who's owned this property since the 1970s. It's absolutely beautiful, especially this year after all the rain and snow up in the mountains. But our goal is to do something really unique within the county. We certainly understand that you're not endorsing 5-acre lots. And in fact, we're looking at a couple different options on this property. We may only end up developing 20 lots and put a portion of it in a conservation easement. We may come back to you and try and get another amendment to the regional plan that will allow us to go down as small as like 2.5 or 3-acre lots with a packaged sewer treatment plant, so there's no conflict between water and sewer, and be able to preserve a huge amount of the space as open space. But I think the most compelling thing that I can think of right now is this summer we were out on the site when that awful fire was burning that started in Doyle and burned right down this canyon. And we were standing right by a large pond on this property where the air tankers and helicopters were actually drawing water out of one of the big ponds to fight the fire. And thinking if there was 2,500 homes in this area, there's no way they would have been able to drop and take water from that pond because of safety concerns. So we hope you support this project. We'll be back for more entitlements at Washoe County if we choose to for additional zoning. But we think this is a great opportunity to kind of reverse course on some things that maybe made sense 15 years ago, but certainly don't now. Thank you.
Thank you. If you can please fill out a card for us. Thank
Heading
you.
that way.
Any others?
I have no other.
Okay, with that, I'll close the public hearing and I'll bring it back. Any discussion, or I will also entertain a motion.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Weisky.
in the case of, well, I move to approve RPC Resolution 17-07, recommending to the RPGB adoption of a regional plan amendment to remove the 1,091 acre site from the City of Reno portion of the TMSA as identified in the 2012 regional plan and as detailed in the staff report.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Motion carries. Next, we have reports, members and directors items.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of quick updates for you. We have had over 1,000 participants in our survey regarding the regional plan update at this point in time. The survey will stay open until November 1. We are continuing to get out to the advisory board meetings, CABs, like we're doing the Citizens Advisory Committee at Sparks tomorrow. So we're trying to hit a lot of folks, what I've heard you say, trying to hit a lot of meetings so that we can share that information with folks. Additionally, we were lucky enough to receive $10,000 in funding from Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission last Wednesday for the final support for our sustainability study. We should be signing contracts on that this week, and we should have the results of that in early December, so we're very pleased about that. And finally, we have just completed the interview process for the consultant for the regional plan update, and I will let you know as soon as I let them know that they have been selected, and those who have been chosen also get to hear that. But we anticipate, again, signing that contract within the next week and moving forward. And finally, we'd like to chat with you about, you have November 8th designated for your next governing board, or sorry, the planning commission meeting. We've got a couple of projects, the timing just kind of isn't lining up very well with that November 8th timeline. We'd like to suggest November 29th, which is the Wednesday after Thanksgiving, for the planning commission meeting instead. And at that point in time, we can give you a good sense of whether or not we would actually need a December planning commission meeting. So I'd like to check in with folks now and see if that's a possibility. For November 24th.
September 29th.
November.
No.
Unless you have a time machine.
We're not going backwards.
Well, they set me in the corner.
I know, that's right.
Okay, I'm thinking that I'm seeing a lot of yeses, so we will go ahead and send that appointment out to you. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Anybody have any questions? Okay. Next, legal counsel's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jessica Prentice for the record. Nothing to report today.
Thank you. All right. Any requests for any future agenda items? Anyone? Okay. Moving along, we have public comment again, so anybody that did not speak before would like to speak again, we can do that now. Good, all right, thank you.
They've heard me.
Next, written correspondence.
We have none.
Okay, thank you. Next, I will take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we're adjourned, thank you.